Did you know that North Korea has its own death metal band that writes songs about their hate for America? And what do we even know about North Korea? That it's a closed country with a dictator who occasionally threatens the nuclear button. He orders delivery from a Chinese McDonald's by plane and throws you in jail for listening to K-pop or other music. According to other people who have fled from the Dprk, every morning begins with the sounds of propaganda songs. They're turned on in the squares using loudspeakers, and they play far from fashionable hip-hop. But the truth is that even in such a closed state, there is creativity. Of course, often it has only one goal: propaganda, but there are exceptions. Today we're going to talk about the existence of two Koreas and why they are so different. What famous artists have performed in the Dprk, and what does Kim Jong Un listen to behind closed doors? You are on the Melomania channel, and we are starting. This year, a song from North Korea suddenly went viral on TikTok. It was called Friendly Father, and surprisingly, it praised Kim Jong Un. This rather optimistic and positive hit was written in such a way that it would get stuck in your head. The lyrics say that Kim Jong Un is actually kind of like a mother, kind of like a father, and has 10 million children that he truly cares about. The remixes and dances have garnered millions of views, leading South Korea to even ban the tune due to, quote, psychological warfare against it. And although most people understood that it was just a propaganda product for export, some people really enjoyed the sound of Friendly Father and other songs that they managed to unearth. Judging by the comments, the song evoked nostalgia in them, reminiscent of old Spanish, French, or even Soviet pop music. And this is quite interesting because North Korea often exports propaganda, but not so often it turns out to be successful. And here, millions of people dance to their music, so probably soon we'll see new clips and new songs from the Dprk. We can say that in North Korea, musicians have almost no creative freedom. Any art should serve people's class education. These songs explain to North Koreans why they should be grateful to their leaders, remain loyal to the party, but most importantly, to their kind father. According to people who have escaped from the Dprk, every morning citizens start with hearing such propaganda songs. They're played on loudspeakers in the squares, and the lyrics are printed in newspapers and magazines so that even people with poor hearing can experience the beauty. Thus, after a while, the song seems to be absorbed into the heads of North Korean citizens and becomes a part of their personality. Because the country is so closed, almost none of their creative product reaches us, but still, we've managed to unearth something, and there's something to tell about. But before we begin, we need to go back in time a little to understand why there are two Koreas and why they are so different. The division of Korea into North and South is one of the most tragic events of the 20th century, and it all started because of World War II and the geopolitical confrontation between the USA and the USSR. Korea was a single country for centuries, but in the late 19th century it came under pressure from China, Japan, and the Russian Empire. In 1910, Japan annexed Korea, establishing colonial rule that lasted until the end of World War II. The Japanese occupation was brutal. Koreans were forced to work for the Japanese economy, were forbidden to use their native language, and were even forced to change their names to Japanese. These events would become the basis for many Korean stories that are popular to this day, in books, in films, and in songs. When Japan surrendered in 1945, Korea was no longer under its control, but the country's future remained uncertain. The United States and the Soviet Union, as winners in World War II, agreed to temporarily divide Korea along the 38th parallel. The North would be under Soviet control, and the South would be under U.S. control. In 1948, two separate states were officially declared. In the South, they established the Republic of Korea, supported by the United States. In the North, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea emerged under the leadership of Kim Il-sung, who was supported by the USSR. Differences in ideologies, political systems, and international alliances quickly turned this division into actual conflict. Tensions reached a peak in 1950 when North Korean forces supported by the USSR and China invaded the South, starting the Korean War. The United States and UN forces intervened to support South Korea, while China sent troops to support the North. The war lasted 3 years and caused massive destruction and the deaths of several million people. An armistice was signed in 1953, but no formal peace treaty was ever signed. The two countries have technically remained at war ever since. North Korea became one of the most closed and repressive states in the world. the totalitarian regime led by the Kim family, which still rules today. Its economy was heavily dependent on support from the USSR and China, but after the Soviet Union collapse in 1991, the country found itself in a deep crisis. Even today, North Korea faces famine, isolation, and tight control from the authorities. The government controls absolutely all spheres of human life, including culture. Creativity here has a certain line from which it's quite dangerous to deviate. So let's talk about music and whether it really is all propaganda. Musical education in the country begins in kindergarten. Before reaching the age of 3, North Koreans go on a state program where, along with arithmetic, dancing, and poetry, they thoroughly study the fates of great leaders and official pages of history. Instead of the usual concept of pop culture, North Korea has a so-called folk culture in which all forms of art are supposed to reflect the fate of the nation and its worldview. Since the party has a monopoly on people's feelings, almost the entire stage repertoire is transformed into agitation and propaganda. However, it would be a mistake to believe that nothing has changed in local art in the 70-plus years since the founding of North Korea. Music of Juche, as North Koreans call themselves, has found many incarnations, from folk-based songs and revolutionary operas to experiments with electronics and their own answer to K-pop. More on that later. In the meantime, let's look behind the metal screen to find out what music can become in conditions of total isolation. North Korea is truly a country of secrets and myths. We have little idea of what's happening inside the country, but we know one thing for sure. Music is there too, and it plays a rather large role in local society. As expected, most of the songs glorify the greatness of the Dprk regime, the country's incomparable leader Kim Jong Un, and members of his family. North Koreans often wake up in the morning with the song "Where Are You, Dear General?" In some parts of the country, it's played over loudspeakers at all hours of the day and used as an alarm clock. In 1948, Kim Il-sung, grandfather of current leader Kim Jong Un, seized power in the newly formed North Korea and immediately set about reshaping the country's artistic principles. He tasked ethnomusicologists with, quote, doing everything they could to unearth the national heritage and continue its great traditions. Original works were refined with the same orchestral pomp that had characterized the revolutionary songs of China and the USSR. Rather than creating new state compositions from scratch, Kim sent musicologists into the countryside where they discovered the most famous folk poems and melodies. Although the Korean Peninsula had shared a common culture for millennia, the leader preferred songs that originated in the north. Their lyrics had to be reinterpreted and reworked to turn the music into a political weapon. All North Korean songs can be roughly divided into two types: songs of the people and songs for the people. The first are performed by stage professionals in an orchestral setting with a mixed folk and academic cast. The second, closer to the people's everyday life, should be known to every self-respecting citizen or one who does not want problems. In song collections, the former have priority, and two of them occupy a particularly honorable place. ENKO is the official anthem in the foreign policy arena. Literally, the word itself translates as patriotic song. The other, second in importance, is Song of General Kim Il-sung, which is essentially also the anthem of the Dprk, but within the country. In the late 1960s, the leader's young son, Kim Jong Il, took the reins of power through artistic policy. Among the many stage productions that emerged under his direct supervision, the so-called 5 Great Revolutionary Operas play a special role. Each of them is a special page in the official history of North Korea, as well as a fundamental consolidation of its basic principles. The first of them, Sea of Blood, was staged in the Pyongyang Ren Theater in July 1971. It's dedicated to the fate of a peasant woman who joins the guerrilla struggle against Japanese oppressors. It was written by Kim Il-sung himself and produced by Kim Jong Il. It's considered the main example of a North Korean revolutionary opera. It was followed by The Flower Girl, the first monumental work, telling the story of a family in debt to a ruthless landowner and filled with a scathing critique of pre-communist feudalism. Among others, one can mention the operas Tell O the Forest, A True Daughter of the Party, and The Song of Mount Kumgang. These 5 plays are constantly performed at the Pyongyang Grand Theater, with Sea of Blood and The Flower Girl having been performed over 1,000 times each. Perhaps because of their immense popularity, but more likely because there's no alternative. According to Kim, because opera combines music, dance, poetry, and theater, it is, quote, a criterion for assessing the level of a country. And a good revolutionary opera should reflect the time in which it was created, be guided by strictly revolutionary principles, and have an emotional impact on the audience. Revolutionary opera productions are still in demand, sometimes even outside the country. In May 2010, Sea of Blood was presented in China, and many performances were sold out. All these operas are stories of darkness and struggle. In the final part of a typical North Korean opera, the all-pervading light of Kim Il-sung, the triumphant who restored his homeland and defeated all the bad guy, triumphs. It's worth noting that Kim Jong Il was a great admirer of the arts and even wrote a book called On the Art of Opera. It's worth mentioning the song Arirang, which has been inscribed on the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List twice, in 2012 by South Korea and in 2014 by the Dprk. Arirang is a Korean folk song. It's believed to be over 600 years old, and during this time, about 3,600 variations have been created. But they're all similar in that they contain a chorus similar to Arirang, Arirang, Ariryo. Some linguists believe that Ari means beautiful and Rang means beloved or fiancé in ancient Korean. The song is sung today in both North and South Korea, and it's a symbol of resistance to the Japanese occupation. Since performing patriotic songs was a criminal offense, Arirang became the unofficial anthem of the resistance. In addition, the song was a kind of bridge between the Dprk and the United States, when in 2008 the New York Philharmonic visited Pyongyang and performed this composition. The event marked the first major cultural visit from the United States to North Korea since the Korean War. The North Korean government granted unprecedented access to the country to more than 300 foreigners. This was not the last time musicians were allowed to perform in North Korea, but more on that later. In North Korea, the word Arirang is also used to refer to an event known as the Arirang Mass Games. It's a huge gymnastics and arts festival, usually held in August or September in Pyongyang. The propaganda story told in North Korea claims that the Korean nation, the land of the morning calm in the east, ended its history of suffering and rose as a worthy nation with the song Arirang. The mass games are ideological in nature, highlighting the legacy and political narratives of the North Korean state with a focus on the Workers' Party of Korea, its armed forces, Kim Il-sung, and Kim Jong Il. This show is famous for its pomp and scale. In August 2007, it even entered the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest mass show in history, with over 1 million people participating. It looks something like this. The song clearly raises not only the fighting spirit, but also awakens pride in one's nation and its history. Other popular compositions in the country were created to raise the people's spirit at difficult times, and there were definitely times like that. For example, there are a number of Korean songs about food. Essentially, it's a social advertisement designed to encourage people to change their habits during difficult times. A song called Pyongyang Cold Noodles Are the Best, which was written during a time of food shortages. There's no food, so at least listen to it. The same goes for the song Potato Pride, which was written to encourage the consumption of potato products. And while these songs may give the impression that Korean music is limited in terms of themes and ways of expressing them, there's actually something interesting to be found in this. Not everyone is interested in watching revolutionary operas, which is why the Dprk has several other bands in its arsenal. Some have filled the niche of electronic music, while others were created as a response to K-pop. So let's talk about the results that came of it. In the 1980s, electronic music took the world by storm. Kim Jong Il, then a full-fledged leader, always considered art to be one of the key strategies of ideological education, so even North Korea could not completely ignore the novelty. At the same time, the craving for traditionalism and the cult of personality remained unshakable, so the new music became a kind of hybrid. In order to rethink foreign trends in a correct, socialist way, the Wang Jason Light Music Band and the Moranbong Electric Ensemble were created with direct party support. Literally from the first seconds, you can hear that this music sounds different from everything we've heard before. Both bands are named after revolutionary sites where Kim Il-sung is said to have fought the Japanese during the colonial era. While retaining political elements, these bands have brought fresh ideas from Chinese, Soviets, and to some extent Western popular music to North Korean propaganda. The secret of their success was the fact that electronic music has not yet acquired a clearly negative connotation in the eyes of the authorities. In addition, the new bands emphasized that they were doing electronic music in a Korean style, completely different from Western artists. The rich tradition of using folk instruments did not bypass this subgenre. It's important to note that in addition to domestic political motives, the Moranbong Band used scenes of simple, everyday happiness, love between a man and a woman, and the song Nice to Meet You was intended as a friendly message to South Korean neighbors. The song was written specifically for the 1989 Youth Game and became popular in 2000 before the first summit of North and South Korea. Their inspiring song, Reunification Rainbow, celebrates the hope for peace between the two Koreas on their own terms, of course. Quote, "Let's become one again, from Mount Baekdu to Mount Hallasan." The lyrics say, the song is one of North Korea's most popular tunes, often played to commuters on the Pyongyang subway. An instrumental version of it is also played on workplace karaoke machines and in noraebangs, or karaoke parlors, throughout North Korea. The main task that the party set for its singers was, quote, to create accessible songs that everyone can sing along to, those that embody the philosophy of life and the richness of feelings. Moranbong coped with this task better than others. The ensemble was undoubtedly the most productive musical band in the country, having released over 150 albums. As for the Wang Jae-sung Band, they also had a strong influence on the popularization of revolutionary and patriotic music in the Dprk. In 2013, the band ceased to exist. There were creepy rumors. They said that Kim Jong Un ordered the country's leading performers and musicians to be brought to a military training ground where he personally shot all members of the Wang Jae-sung in their presence. But the information was not confirmed. The ensemble performed songs that combined traditional Korean melodies with modern musical elements. Their compositions were often dedicated to the glorification of the country's leadership, love for the homeland, and socialist ideals. Using a variety of instruments, the Wang Jae-sung Light Music Band created a unique sound that reflected the national identity and cultural heritage of the Dprk. K-pop is banned in the country, but its global popularity could not but affect the development of pop music in the Dprk. Thus, in 2012, Kim Jong Un ordered the formation of the girl band Moranbong, which became a kind of North Korean version of the Spice Girls. Kim Jong Un personally selected the band members, seeking to modernize the country's cultural scene and create an alternative to South Korean K-pop music. By North Korean standards, its members had an extremely defiant appearance. Their image included high heels, miniskirts, makeup, and jewelry. In addition, they openly used capitalist Yamaha and Roland instruments, unlike their predecessors from Moranbong, who were forced to hide the logos. At their debut performance, Moranbong performed more than 10 songs from popular Disney cartoons, as well as the main theme from Rocky, Gonna Fly Now, which even sounds wild today. This indulgence, although insignificant, was supposed to be perceived as a modernization of the Juche course, its natural progress and development. They have quite a lot of bangers, so to speak, because this is Kim Jong Un's favorite band and what the leader listens to, the people listen to. For example, their song about Mount Pictou, the mountain itself, is located in the north of the DPRK on the border with China. It's an active volcano with a giant crystal blue lake in the middle. This is a very important place for the entire Korean Peninsula and not just for North Korea, because there's a legend that this is where the Korean people originated. The song We Will Go to Mount Pictou celebrates this pilgrimage. Interestingly, according to North Korean legend, this is also the place where Kim Jong Il was born and where Kim Il-sung, the first leader of the DPRK, set up his guerrilla camp during the Japanese Empire. They also have the North Korean New Year's hit, which is heard everywhere on New Year's Eve, like Let It Snow, only more popular. But there is one fact that cancels out the positive vibes that Moranbong music creates. This is the fact that their music's often played in the background of North Korean propaganda videos depicting the use of nuclear weapons. It's unlikely that this is a creative impulse of the musicians themselves, but rather a government order that cannot be refused. But the contrast is still striking. On the one hand, the band sings about the new year, on the other, about a nuclear apocalypse. In 2013, Moranbong did not appear in public, which gave reason to South Korean and Western journalists to claim that the girls were executed and their relatives were sent to camps. This is the most common type of rumor that appears after disappearing from the public eye. However, the band soon resumed giving concerts and successfully exists today. Another big Korean hit is the Whistle Song by Hae Young-jung. It has become popular not only in its own country, but also abroad, and is often used as an example of a musical style that attempts to combine patriotic content with melody. The song has a lyrical plot that celebrates love for a man, cleverly hiding the general idea of loyalty to the country and its leader under the lyrics. The song became a hit in North Korea and is often performed at state concerts and official events. Given its mild and accessible content, the composition is included in the repertoire aimed at increasing cultural influence outside the country. The whistle song has also been used in films and on television, emphasizing its versatility. The whistling motif has made it recognizable even among those who are not familiar with North Korean music. In a country where the government has a monopoly on the arts, dissent can cause serious problems even for famous artists. A striking example is the story of Kim Jong Un, a former soloist of the Pyongyang State Symphony Orchestra whose life changed dramatically when someone heard him play a romantic Western melody. One day, he was rehearsing in his room, and suddenly Richard Clayderman's Comme Amour came to mind, a distant motif that Kim had heard as an exchange student in Moscow and learned, wanting to impress a girl. At that very moment, a patrol informant passed his door. Having heard the Western character of the music, he reported it to the secret police. Only his elite status saved Kim from punishment. His only sentence was to repeatedly rewrite a 10-page apology letter by hand. However, having felt the weight of the state machine for the first time, Wong lost his emotional connection with the country and fled to China thanks to a bribe he gave to the border guards. Kim Jong Un was shown the way to a small village where he said that he could play the piano but had never played. To feed himself, he had to work in the fields with farmers. While working at the sawmill, the man met another North Korean fugitive who told him that there was a piano in a nearby church. It turned out to be an old, out-of-tune instrument, but seeing it lifted Kim Jong Un's spirits. Soon, Jong Un began playing the piano regularly at the church, impressing everyone with his skill. He posed as a South Korean who spoke little Chinese. Eventually, more than a year after fleeing Pyongyang, he managed to obtain a fake South Korean passport and travel to Seoul to start a new life. In fact, even the authorities do not always have a completely negative attitude towards Western music. Thanks to WikiLeaks, the world learned about the secret passion of Kim Jong-chul, the second son of Kim Jong Il, for Eric Clapton's music. Those who can afford the benefits of civilization quietly enjoy South Korean and Western novelties. Ordinary citizens are forbidden to do so, under fear of the death penalty. However, there are sometimes periods of thaw in the DPRK. For example, when the government allowed the New York Philharmonic to perform, but there have been other cases. In 1991, the Japanese all-female rock band Shoya, known for their influence on the hard rock scene, visited the DPRK. They performed at an event called Love and Rock and Roll in North Korea. The event was a unique opportunity for the musicians to introduce Japanese rock culture to one of the most secretive countries in the world. Several videos from that day have even survived. The band's performance was part of a cultural exchange organized by the North Korean government, which at the time sometimes invited foreign artists to demonstrate its openness to world culture. While details of the concert itself remained limited, the moment underscores the importance of Shoya as a cultural bridge between two countries that have traditionally had difficult diplomatic relations. After the New York Philharmonic's performance in 2008, there was a long pause, but in 2015, the almost impossible happened. Slovenian metal band Laibach visited the Dprk for a concert. The event was organized by Norwegian artist Morten Travik, who had experience in cultural exchanges with North Korea. Trying to not shock the audience too much, the band performed covers of songs from the musical The Sound of Music, as well as Across the Universe by the Beatles.
We grow. We walk and we stand tall.
Alongside their own songs. The Slovenians' performance was greeted with polite but thunderous applause. At the same time, the musicians themselves were deeply impressed and made a documentary and a music video about their trip. A few years later, South Korean artists performed in Pyongyang the famous K-pop band Red Velvet. Singers So-young and Choi Jung-hee, as well as musicians Cho Young-pil and Lee Sung-hee. It was an unprecedented event, a thaw that has never been seen before, especially considering the fact that the performance was highly appreciated by the leader of the Dprk, Kim Jong Un. He attended the concert with his wife and was satisfied.
예상치 못했던 김정은 위원장과의 만남에 대한 이야기도 들어볼 수 있었는데요.
The concert titled Spring is Coming was seen as one of the steps towards a diplomatic thaw between the two countries as they try to draw closer despite the crisis over recent nuclear and ballistic missile tests. Kim Jong Un became the first North Korean leader to ever attend a South Korean concert. It was also the only Red Velvet concert of its kind where fans were not heard screaming. The North Korean audience listened to the music in silence. Such concerts gave hope that the Dprk regime was gradually softening and ready for peaceful coexistence with its neighbors, but these hopes were quickly evaporated. Since then, something has changed dramatically, and in 2024, 2 teenagers from the Dprk were given 12 years of hard labor for watching South Korean TV series and listening to their music. The Institute for the Development of the South and the North claims that such a severe punishment for teenagers was chosen in order to send a warning to all other citizens of the country. So here's a question for you. If you were a crazy dictator, what kind of music would you punish with hard labor for? Write in the comments so everyone knows who exactly not to vote for, or vice versa. But the truth is that even super unfair laws against free art cannot become an obstacle to self-expression. In modern North Korea, there's a whole network of underground clubs where partygoers close the doors and windows to prevent the sound of banned K-pop discs from leaking out. The banned music can also be played on special DVD players designed to cover up traces. That is, the discs erase all information from themselves if they're removed in the usual way. The stakes are high, but the desire to listen to something other than the propaganda songs on the radio that never turn off sometimes wins out. And that's despite the incredible deadliness you can get for just a few songs. But why is North Korea fighting so hard against South Korean culture? The fact is that North Korean propaganda has been telling their people about the hardships of life in South Korea for years. But this image is being destroyed by South Korean films and music videos that illegally entered the country through China. They began to gain popularity against the backdrop of quarantine measures due to the coronavirus pandemic, so in December 2020, North Korea even tightened laws against those who listen to music, watch movies, and read books from South Korea. Those who distribute such materials face punishment up to and including the death penalty. In addition to South Korean culture, North Korea also tries to combat Japanese and American culture. However, this was not always the case. In the 2010s, North Korean television showed characters in Mickey and Minnie Mouse costumes. Kiosks sold discs with Disney cartoons, The Lion King and Cinderella, and restaurants offered foreign films, concerts, and TV shows. The turn in Kim Jong Un's cultural policy came after his failed negotiations with then U.S. President Donald Trump in February 2019. At that time, North Korea refused to denuclearize and the United States refused to lift sanctions. After that, Kim Jong Un declared that the country would build a, quote, self-sufficient economy that would not depend on trade with the outside world. And while law enforcement can now check anyone's phone whenever they want, North Korean youth find ways to avoid punishment. The best strategy for student resistance is guitars. They're easy to get, and if outsiders are around, you can always switch to legal songs. In addition, some songs are used to secretly protest against the regime. For example, the lyrics of famous revolutionary songs are sometimes rewritten to mock the authorities. However, this is extremely dangerous, as such actions are punished very severely. The current situation with music in the Dprk is a story of secrets, raids, technical ingenuity, and extreme caution. For many North Koreans, enjoying their favorite music is like a game of cat and mouse with the authorities, where each harsh ban is followed by a new solution. Far from prying ears, only secret apartments listen to their melodies, and who knows how many more decades will pass before music ceases to be a reason for murder or imprisonment. Before we talk about other musical groups from the Dprk, we would be grateful for a like and a subscription. To make this video, we had to listen to a lot of songs about what a noble and cool guy Kim Jong Un is, so we'd be grateful if it was all not in vain. Thank you, and let's continue. In a country whose power is completely based on weapons and nuclear threats, the main musicians can be considered the central military orchestra of the Korean People's Army. And while Korean soldiers are dying ingloriously in the war in Ukraine, the military orchestra is used to play in honor of the birthdays of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong Il. The repertoire consists mostly of patriotic and ideological songs that glorify the ruling Kim family and the country's military achievements. These works are characterized by warlike and solemn intonations, often including a combination of traditional Korean instruments and Western brass sections. But the problem is that their peak of fame is performances at national holidays, as well as at Russian orchestra competitions. The largest non-military band is the Unhasu Orchestra, which translates as Milky Way. The musicians perform traditional Korean melodies, but in a modern arrangement. In 2012, the orchestra toured France, and in Paris, the group even performed under the direction of South Korean conductor Myung-won. The musicians received permission to travel to the capitalist country because one of the members of the group was the wife of the head of state, Ri Sol-ju. However, Unhasu disbanded shortly after this tour. Kim Jong Un was probably jealous of his wife's French fans after the European tour, so there were many conflicting rumors. On August 29, 2013, the Chosun Ilbo reported that key members of the Moranbong Band and the Unhasu Orchestra were forced to attend the execution due to the shooting of some Unhasu members, including their violinist, Moon Kyung-jin, as well as members of Wong Jae-sung and singer Hyung Sung-woo. The truth is that such stories regularly make it into the media and quickly go viral. The world is ready to accept any news about North Korea, and the more sensational, the better. Some of them may be true, but a significant part is not. For example, the executed singer Hyung Sung-woo turned out to be alive and well. As for the singer who was shot, according to journalists, she is also very popular in the Dprk. Hyung Sung-woo started performing in the band Pochanbo, but over time she collected enough songs for solo work. The singer's main hit is Excellent Horse-Like Lady, the melody of which includes the sounds of a laser, which is almost a revolutionary decision for the DPRK music.
우리 공장 동무들 웃으며 말으래요.
And in North Korea, they write and sing odes to milling machines as the most important tool of the working class. There's an interesting story connected with this. There's a technology called CNC, or computer numerical control. Computers do calculations and control machines much more precisely than humans can. CNC is the basis of all modern manufacturing around the world, yet North Korean propaganda presents it as a wonderful domestic technology that they even write songs about. And all because this technology is used to produce components for nuclear weapons. The song itself can be heard in karaoke machines in workplaces across the country. Also worth mentioning is the Jong Il ensemble. They're one of the most famous musical bands in the DPRK and have a significant role in popularizing ideological music. The name Jong Il translates as reunification, reflecting the theme of many of their songs, which are dedicated to dreams of reunifying the Korean Peninsula. The group specializes in performing songs with patriotic themes, using elements of both traditional Korean music and modern pop music. Another major Korean group is the Monsudae Art Troupe. Founded in 1969, the troupe is named after the Monsudae district in Pyongyang, home to the famous statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong Il. Even its name suggests the ideological content of its work. The troupe specializes in songs that praise the DPRK leadership, glorify socialism, and depict the heroism of the working people. Their performances are spectacular. The troupe includes a large choir, an orchestra, a dance group, and soloists.
영원한 삶의 별에요.
The ensemble was also an instrument of the DPRK's cultural diplomacy. In different years, it performed on international stages, presenting North Korean art outside the country. But you can hardly be surprised by classical ensembles because it was quite expected. However, there is also rare documentary evidence of the local underground. For example, a modest mini-album of the only local death metal band known outside the DPRK, Red War. Red War is a little-known death metal band that formed in the DPRK and released their demo album Demo Tape in 2010. The tracklist includes 3 songs: War with USA, Stop Imperialism, and Painful Hate Until Death. According to the descriptions, the lyrics and song titles indicate an ideological bias typical of North Korean propaganda. The album's sound itself is typical of the genre, heavy, aggressive, with deep growling, although the music, according to reviews, is not considered outstanding, even within the underground. Interestingly, the very presence of such a band in the DPRK is exceptional. Although their music may have been allowed by the authorities as a kind of propaganda, it demonstrates the existence of a metal scene, even in such a closed country. Interestingly, North Korean hip-hop was not found, but it seems that if there is death metal, then rap is also hidden somewhere. Perhaps they punish it especially severely, and all records are burned and scattered in the wind. I would like to end today's episode not with classical music, but with another not very obvious band, which is not at all associated with North Korea. It sounds like this. And although it looks and sounds like a joke, in fact, it is a completely real band. It's called T-Girl and represents an extremely deep underground genre, gore grind. According to legend, it was founded in 2013 in Pyongyang. Their work is a mixture of extreme metal genres such as noise grind and gore noise, which are distinguished by a heavy sound and often provocative themes, but even the album cover itself hints at this. It's obvious that their style is a kind of protest and experiment that combines traditional Korean instruments with Western metal genres. For example, their composition Arirang Gangbang combines something very valuable for Koreans with something completely contemptible. It's quite possible that this is just a hoax, but I'd like to believe that this is really a band from the Dprk. If such a thing is possible there, then other genres are also possible. So I want to end the video with this song, so that you have an ambiguous impression of North Korean music. It seems that today you, albeit against your will, learned something new about North Korea. We hope it was interesting. When Korea was divided along the 38th parallel, two worlds were formed. In one of them, culture flourishes. In the other, it is constrained by frameworks and ideological attitudes. It's not known when exactly the criminal Kim regime will fall, but it's amazing that even under such conditions, people are engaged in creativity and try to express themselves through music. Of course, under conditions of total control and draconian laws, it's almost impossible to be a free creator, but fortunately, dictators are not eternal, unlike art. As we can see, today, almost all the creativity in the Dprk glorifies the government in one way or another, but among the propaganda motives, there's also a place for simple stories that are close to all people. And this is wonderful. If you liked the video, we'll be grateful for a like and subscription. This was the Melomania channel, but for now, thank you for watching, and we'll meet again soon with other, no less interesting stories.